Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of TA with MK. My name is MK, and today's episode is sponsored by the lovely natural thing known as water, used to combat the heat and dehydration, which we're dealing with a lot right now, at least where I'm from, as it's a hot, hot summer, which I love, but you gotta remember to stay hydrated, my friends. I have no idea why I decided to do that in today's intro, other than I just wanted a drink of water after I'd already started the camera. So, at any rate, in today's episode, we're going to follow up on yesterday's ideas as far as Bitcoin, maybe painting a little bit of a picture on the smaller time frames as to which direction it wants to go. Today, we're getting a little more data and some more things added to that painting, I guess, so to speak. We're also going to talk a little bit more about the CPI data that's coming out tomorrow, as the whole market kind of seems to be in what I would call a wait and see mode, because obviously that data coming out tomorrow is going to have an influence on what direction the price goes. But that being said, there are definitely some clues and levels to watch out for, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Now, if you guys are liking the content, please remember to like and subscribe, and let's go. It's TA with MK. It's TA with MK. Alright, so to start out, we're going to talk about the CPI data that's coming out tomorrow, and obviously today we're going to be a little more careful with how we go about that. If you watched yesterday's video, I gave you guys a list of upcoming events. It was a copy and paste from the trading group that I'm a part of, which is Crypto Revolution, which I always talk about on my channel as being a paid group that I'm a member of. And, sometimes some of the information that I get does come from there, but I'm always very careful about crediting them and not sharing anything that I would consider top secret or confidential. However, I made the mistake of ruining someone's day yesterday. I don't know if that person was just unaware that this information is literally all over the internet, but wasn't top secret or confidential. I kind of just imagine they were sitting there thinking, I pay for this information. How dare you, sir? How dare you tell other people something that they can find on their own? Well, anyway, we're not going to make that mistake today. So what we're going to do today is actually show you, one of the websites. There's actually a ton of them, but here's one of the websites where you can find this information, and it is marketwatch.com. And right here on this page, we've got the U.S. economic calendar. Now, right off the get-go, one of the cool things you'll notice up here on the top right of this marketwatch.com is that it says subscribe now, which clearly, as you can see, I am not actually subscribed, and I do not have an account, but I've been able to access this said top secret information, which this is pretty cool. So it says this week's major U.S. economic report, So you can see that this is for this week. You can scroll down, it will tell you what's coming up next week. And if you scroll down even a little further, you can see what you've maybe missed from the previous week. So if we go back up here to the top, we can see that tomorrow, Wednesday, July 13th, at 8:30 a.m., this would be Eastern time, they're going to have the CPI, or Consumer Price Index, for the monthly. Also at 8:30, they're going to have the core CPI for the monthly, and then also they're going to give the CPI year over year comes out, and the core CPI year over year. So what is CPI? Now, here is a simple Google search of CPI Data Explained, and there's just two things I wanted to read to you real quick. The first just being kind of the definition of CPI. It says the Consumer Price Index, or CPI, is a measure of the average change over time in the prices paid by urban consumers for a market basket of consumer goods and services. I also want to scroll down here and read this other one that says, what can CPI data tell us? Well, let's read. The Consumer Price Index measures the overall change in consumer prices over time based on a representative basket of goods and services. Like it said above, the CPI is the most widely used measure of inflation, closely followed by policymakers, financial markets, businesses, and consumers. Now, you can combine that data with some data that you can get from this website, federalreserve.gov. I'll leave a link in the description. I have spoke about this previously on the channel, but it's just a good website to find out what the schedule is for the FOMC meetings for 2022. If you're unaware, these FOMC meetings are where the Fed or Colin Powell will come out and announce if there is a rate hike, and if so, what the basis point rate hike is. And the market almost always inevitably reacts to this. Usually it actually reacts the most leading up to it. And I'll give you an example. So back here in May, on the 4th, right, they had announced a 50 basis point rate hike. Well, come June, which was the last one that we had, the middle of last month, on the 15th, the market was, anticipating a potential 75 basis point rate hike, which was obviously higher. And if you look back here on like a Bitcoin chart, here's price action from around the 15th, leading up to the 15th, it actually dropped, from around 29,300, clear down. By the time the 15th came around, it was, back down here at around 20,000, right? So you saw a pretty big 30% drop just in the anticipation of that 75 basis point rate hike, which had been discussed and was rumored to be what was going to happen. Now, this next one, the same thing has potential, because here, July 26th and 27th, so on the 27th, we'll find out, are they going to match that 75 basis point rate hike, which the market kind of expects. I don't think the market would react too negatively to that. If by chance they only did a 50 basis point rate hike, that would be very bullish. But there's rumors they may go as high as 100. Which, again, just like in June, would exceed kind of what the expectation was. And, the market could then see another, large reaction in that case, to the downside. Maybe put in some brand new lows that are lower than our previous low at around, 17,500, for example. So before we jump into the actual Bitcoin price and kind of what we're watching for over the next, 24 to 48 hours, just keep in mind that what information comes out tomorrow as far as the CPI data will have a direct impact on what happens later this month as far as the rate hike goes, because CPI, as I explained in the beginning of the video, is one of the biggest used gauges as far as inflation goes, being that being the hot word of late, right? Inflation, recession, those are some of the buzzwords of recent. And we'll get a good feel for what to expect later this month as far as that rate hike goes based on the CPI data that comes out tomorrow, because we're going to find out, are we starting to get inflation under control? And if we're not, then we can kind of anticipate ahead of time that the end of the month is going to be bearish, because there's probably going to be at least a 75, if not 100 basis point rate hike. So you just need to combine these kind of things together as you're making any sort of midterm trades. Now, again, I'll leave a link in the description to my Telegram group. In that group, we do take a lot of short-term trades as well, more of what you would call day trading. But, that's a little harder to share on YouTube because, as I've mentioned in previous videos, usually that's going to be irrelevant by the time you watch it. But as far as trying to get an idea of when to buy and accumulate or hold on to something midterm, or maybe you're even opening up a midterm short position, again, I'll also leave a link in the description for my video on how to leverage trade on Kucoin. Just remember to manage your risk accordingly. But if you're building any sort of a midterm position, you need to, before you think of anything, just always have that stuff in the back of your mind, especially with how times are right now. Markets are going to react to this data that comes out. The CPI, obviously, that's tomorrow, and, the FOMC meeting that's later this month. Okay, so I said a whole lot that amounted to very little, I guess, just to kind of get to this. So this isn't something that I necessarily have shared on my previous couple videos as far as the Bitcoin price goes, but I felt it was relevant to share today. And this is just kind of the ascending triangle that Bitcoin was essentially in. And we had this bull trap up here where price action did break above but wasn't able to hold this level. And this level was around 21,800, but it did break above. It got rejected at around 22,500. And we discussed in a previous video that made sense because that is where the 200 simple moving average on the weekly time frame sits. But what would have been nice and bullish would have been if it would have got rejected there and maybe accumulated for a bit above this previous resistance, right? Resistance, but it was unable to do that. It lost that level, bearishly retested it right here, and now this whole move from 21,800 up to 22,500 became what is known as the bull trap. Now, one of the favorite trading strategies of my mentor, which would be Chris from Crypto Revolution, again, I'll leave the link in the description. You can check his channel out, do your own research on if you want to join his trading group. It is definitely highly beneficial, and most everything that I've learned, at least as far as basic things go, came from that channel. Anything that I've been learning since or more advanced stuff has come from some other YouTubers and things as well, which I've mentioned also in some other videos. But at any rate, one of his favorite trading strategies is bull traps and bear traps. And had you taken this trade, this was about a 10% move at this point. Yeah, about a little over 10% move, maybe even 11% move from if you would have opened it at this bearish retest back down to where price action is now, and which is the bottom of the channel. And he often talks about in his group that If you do get a bull trap in this case, and it goes back inside the pattern, you're going to see a violent move back to the bottom of the pattern. Now what we're looking for now is there going to be a bear trap? 19,500 is a level that I was eyeing for a 4-hour candle to close, which one has already. I want to see a second one close below 19,500 just for confirmation. And we're a little over 2 hours and 20 minutes away from that candle closing. I do believe that's also probably in line with when the daily candle closes as well, which is going to be important. And if the daily candle closes under 19,500, I will be looking to DCA into a short position, but I don't expect any major move, obviously, until tomorrow when that information comes out. If that comes out, neutral or possibly even somewhat bullish, we're going to be on the keeping an eye out now for a bear trap. I do believe that if that comes out decent and price action that happens to get back inside of this pattern, if it breaks back above, let's just say like 19,600-ish and starts closing 4-hour candles there, and that information comes out decent tomorrow, well, then I would expect to move back to the top of the range, which would be a trade you could take, again, 10%-ish. If you're using something like 5x leverage, that could be a 50% gain, which is a very good trade. On the flip side of that, what would we expect on the downside of this? Well, if that news comes out bearish tomorrow and this does remain closing 4-hour candles below 19,500, which to me would mean that this would just be a bearish retest of the underside of this ascending triangle. Well, if we just take the measured move, which wouldn't play out instantly but could play out over time, that's where I took this, drug it over to here where the breakdown happened, and you're looking at potentially something down around 16,000. I do think first we would probably see some sort of a bounce back down here at 18,600, and if that breaks, of course, another bounce back down here at this low. But I do think if that's bearish news that comes out tomorrow, that's the trade that I'm leaning towards. But we're going to wait for that information to come out, let the daily candle close, build a little more data to put to our painting, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video and in yesterday's video, and we'll go from there. Okie dokie. Now, if I sounded a little bit sarcastic or bitter or whatever maybe is the right word for it in today's video, as far as that top secret information goes, I do apologize. I realize everybody has their thing that I guess bugs them. I know I'm not a huge fan of people chewing on ice, for example, so hey, I guess I have to just respect other people's opinions, and that's what I try to do on this channel. And whenever I am taking ideas or expounding on ideas from other YouTubers, I do tend to try my best to always give credit and don't take credit for myself. However, maybe if I did slip up yesterday, I do apologize. And if you guys are liking the content, please remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you tomorrow. It's TAD.